we're at the movies. You grab your popcorn bucket, you're heading for home, the credits are starting to roll, and then bam. Well, why is everybody still sitting down? Oh, there's this post-credit scene, and it changes everything, right? You thought that this movie was just about Iron Man or Captain America, or maybe even Squirrel Girl. Yes, Squirrel Girl is a real Marvel superhero. I'm not making it up. You thought it was about one of those big stars. Well, it turns out maybe there was more to it. Remember Ferris Bueller a million years ago? At the end of the credits, there was a scene where he popped up. He's like, "What are you doing here? Go home." Now, Marvel's made it a thing. It happens all the time. Director slips in a scene at the end to show you that everything is actually, that you just watched, was actually connected to something much bigger that maybe you didn't even anticipate coming. Well, that's Ruth 4:14-22. It's a quiet story about famine and loss and poverty and loyalty and redemption. But then right at the end, the curtain's pulled back and we see that all of that stuff was part of an even bigger story that was happening all along. So just to catch you up, in case you're not familiar with the characters here, we got some stars of the story. Elimelech, he left Bethlehem for this enemy nation during a famine, and he never came back. He died in a foreign land. His widow was left behind, Naomi. She returned back to Bethlehem bitter and broken, convinced that the story was over for her. Both of her sons died over there, and so now she had these two daughters-in-law, and one of them leaves her. So alongside Naomi is her daughter-in-law, Ruth, also a widow. And now they're back in Bethlehem. For Ruth, this is an enemy nation. And she's scraping by with charity scraps in a foreign land with no safety net at all. And then there is Boaz. He's a man of integrity. He's related to Elimelech. And so he gets to step in as a redeemer for his family. And it's a family line that looked like it was finished, but because Boaz stepped in, suddenly that family line can continue. And these are the players on the stage as the credits are starting to roll. Right there, God then surprises us with this post-credit scene, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So Boaz, older guy, marries Ruth, the widow. Back in chapter 2, Ruth called herself a slave servant. In chapter 3, she upgraded herself to a maidservant, but now she is a wife. Boaz marries Ruth, and now in verse 13, we see she's also going to have a baby. Ruth's going to be a mom, and so she has the baby, and it's a boy. And look where we pick up here at verse 14. Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a redeemer. And may his name be renowned in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who's more to you than 7 sons, has given birth. So all the women of Bethlehem saw what Naomi was going through, and they were saying, Ruth, she's so great. She's more to you than 7 sons. In their culture, if you had a son, that was a blessing. And the number 7 was like the ultimate. Perfect, complete. So to have 7 sons would be having an ultimate blessing. And the women of the village saw what Ruth had done for Naomi, and that through that there was redemption and the family line continued. They said, Ruth's like having 7 sons. And if you remember Naomi, the mother-in-law, remember how she was pretty down. She said, don't call me Naomi, call me bitter. She was really down. She was filled with bitterness, but now she's blessed. And we see a picture of redemption, God rewriting Naomi's bitterness with blessing. So now let's go to verse 16. Then Naomi took the child, laid him on her lap, and became a nurse. And she wasn't nursing him. That was not biologically possible. She was a nurse to him. She was like a nanny, kind of. She cared for the baby. And the women of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, a son has been born to Naomi. And the women named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. Hold on to that last name. We're going to come back to that last name, David. Now look at verses 18-22. Now these are the generations of Perez. Perez fathered Hezron. Hezron fathered Ram. Ram fathered Amminadab. Amminadab fathered Nahshon. Nahshon fathered Salmon. Salmon fathered Boaz. Boaz fathered Obed. Obed fathered Jesse. And Jesse fathered David. So now I know how it is. You usually just skip over the genealogies, don't we? Or like, boring. Admit it, you skip over the genealogies, don't you? I know what it's like, I know. But try to think about genealogies differently. With this genealogy, think of it as a fireworks show. Okay, the whole book that we've been reading was sort of like, stuff, some oohs and some ahs. Naomi's return, ooh. Ruth's loyalty, ah. Boaz's redemption, ooh. Now we're getting to this genealogy. Now we're getting to the grand finale of this book. The sky is lighting up. It's so bright you can see the smoke. You can start to smell the sulfur because pop, 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 right? The story was never about just one family. You see, this whole story that we read the last 3 weeks was leading up to something big, not just a story about one family's survival in Bethlehem. This genealogy isn't random. It's about an entire family actually redeeming the world. So did you notice? It had 10 names there. We just read through 10 names. Kind of weird names. But it's not an accident that it was 10 names. Noah's genealogy, if you go back in the old, it had 10 names. Abraham's genealogy had 10 names. Now, Ruth's genealogy has 10 names that lead to King David. Each one of those marked a covenant moment in the history of God's people. God promising to bless, to preserve, to redeem. And right here, he's doing it again. Do you see the fireworks? But look at this God who chose to carry this covenant forward. It wasn't, look who he chose. Look who he chose. English teachers are cringing right now. Look who God chose to move this covenant forward. Was it the elite and the powerful of Israel? Was it the wealthy and the polished? No, it was a broke immigrant widow from a foreign land who had to glean leftover grain just to survive. This is what I want you to notice. That God's kingdom line runs through the most unlikely people in history. Obed leads to Jesse. Jesse leads to David. And generations later, David's line leads straight to Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Ruth. Jesus Christ, the Redeemer of the world. So this genealogy is God's way of saying all that stuff that happened in this story, it was all a part of my plan. All of it. The good, the bad, the suffering, the death, the redemption, the new life. All of it was part of his plan. So we see this list of hard to pronounce names and we think, no thanks. But the original hearers, think about this, genealogies were huge. That's their actual family. That's like if I stood up here and started telling stories about your grandfather. You would feel something, wouldn't you? You're like, hey, I know that guy. He's part of my family. That's what genealogies were to the original hearers. It's not abstract history. It is personal. It's family history. For Israel, those names, each name, it was evidence of God's faithfulness in the past, his promises carrying through to the present, and his plans to redeem all of humanity in the future. Abraham, it's like fireworks. Ooh, God keeping his promise to bless the nations. David, this shepherd boy who raises up a king, a man after his own heart. Jesus is born. Oh, wow. The sky erupts, the grand finale where every promise comes true in him. So genealogies, friends, they're not just filler. They're not things to skip over. They're God shouting, look at my plan. It is on track. My promises, I didn't forget them. My story, it is still moving forward. Even in the midst of your lowest moments, my plans are still moving forward. So when Ruth 4 ends with this genealogy, it's not just some throwaway ending. It is the grand finale pointing directly to Jesus. This family line, the one that leads to King David and ultimately to Jesus himself, runs right through Ruth, an immigrant widow with no earthly claim to Israel's promises. You know what that tells me? God dwells with the poor and the powerless, not the polished and the powerful. God dwells with the poor and the powerless, not the polished and the powerful. The fireworks finale, it's not just about history moving forward. It's about who God chooses to carry his promises forward. He doesn't build his kingdom on the backs of the rich and the powerful and the elites. He builds his kingdom through the very people this world overlooks. Like a broke, widowed immigrant from a foreign country. And this fireworks show doesn't just end in Bethlehem. It keeps going through generations until the night sky is exploding with the birth of Jesus Christ. So here's the pattern that God establishes. A Moabite widow is written into the family tree of Israel's greatest king. Elimelech, a dead guy, his family, the one that seemed dead and done, God restores it. Ruth's baby, born in Bethlehem, becomes the bridge from tragedy to triumph. This little baby. This genealogy is not just about Naomi's arms being filled with a grandbaby or Ruth's emptiness being healed. It's about God setting the stage for something even bigger. So what does all this mean? Ruth's poverty was never just about empty jars of grain. Think about what Ruth lost. Her husband died, which meant she was cut off from security. She was cut off from protection and provision. She couldn't own land. She couldn't do things. She was essentially property. And now she's on her own. She left Moab, her country, modern day Jordan. She left that for Israel. She was cut off from her people, from her homeland. She comes to Bethlehem as an outsider. So she's an outsider from the beginning. And she knew it everywhere she went. She heard the whispers. She had no claim to inheritance because she was cut off from the resources of her father-in-law's family here in Bethlehem. That means Ruth's poverty was fundamentally relational. Same with Naomi. Naomi's poverty was not necessarily empty grain jars as much as it was relational poverty. And that's really what poverty is, according to the scriptures. It's not primarily about the size of your bank account. Poverty in the scriptures is just about, not just about having no money in your bank account. It's primarily about being cut off from belonging, from family, and from hope. And that's not just Naomi and Ruth in 1200 BC. That's the divorced welder nursing a beer all alone in the garage on a Friday night. That's the dude who gets off work at 2 a.m. and has to scroll through his phone and wonder why all his buddies stopped texting him back when he switched to second shift. That's the baby boomer whose grandkids don't want to be around anymore because every family gathering turns into a rant about politics. That's the single mom staring at an empty kitchen table after the kids finally fall asleep. See, poverty, that's what it feels like. To be cut off from relationship, from belonging. And that, my friends, is exactly where God seems to show up. Their jars were empty because their relationships were severed. Did you see that? Ruth and Naomi, they were out of food because the relationships had been severed. And God's redemption, it wasn't just food, it wasn't just marriage, it was pulling them into a family line that would eventually bless the entire world. So Obed, this little baby that's born, Obed, he will give birth to a guy named Jesse. He will not give birth. Okay, again, biology lesson number 2 in the sermon. Jesse did not give birth to anybody. Jesse had a son with his wife. Obed had a son named Jesse. Jesse had a son named David. And generations later, David's line will lead to Jesus. So do you see it? When God restores the relationally broken, he's not just fixing one family. He's moving history toward redemption for the whole world. Think of it. In the wilderness, he pitched his tent among people living in tents. The God of the universe was camping out like he was in a refugee camp. In the law, when he gave the law to the people, he commands Israel to leave the edges of your field for the vulnerable. Through the prophets, he says, I dwell with the contrite and the lowly in spirit. In the Psalms, he's called the father to the fatherless, the defender of the widows. So when Ruth 4 ends here with his genealogy, it should be a neon sign flashing, this is how God works. He raises up the humble, the cut off, the relationally broken. He raises up those at their lowest in order to carry his promises forward. The bottom of the food chain is where he hangs out. That's who he drafts on his team. You know why that's good news? Because that's us. That's us. This is not theoretical, not like, wouldn't it be nice if he liked it? You know, he actually drafts us as is. If you ever felt like an outsider looking in, that's you. If you've ever felt cut off from what you were supposed to have, that is you. If you've ever been sitting in a room feeling like everybody else has it together except you, that's you. God doesn't just tolerate your brokenness until you get your act together. He chooses you in your brokenness to carry his plans of cosmic redemption forward. Doesn't that blow your mind? Doesn't make any sense. But Ruth didn't get cleaned up first and then get chosen. She was chosen in the midst of her mess, in the midst of her need, in the middle of a foreign land, in her complete dependence. That's how Ruth was chosen to be written into the family tree of Jesus Christ. And friends, that's how you get adopted into the same family, through complete dependence. But we get this wrong. You knew this was coming. How do we get it wrong? Let's just be honest, okay? This is not how we think life is supposed to be. We want God to dwell in the comfortable, in the safe, in the shiny, in the things that look successful. That's not where he lives. God dwells with the poor. God dwells with the powerless, not the polished and the powerful. So if poverty in Ruth, it wasn't just about empty jars, but about being cut off from belonging, then what does that mean for all of us? It means God's people are supposed to be the ones who close the gaps relationally. We don't just hand out bread, we invite people to the table. But somewhere along the way, Israel forgot. They had a temple, the sacrifices, the songs. But that whole time they were missing the heart. And that's when God sent prophets. And the prophets kept shouting the same thing century after century. He said, you can't sing about grace and ignore the hungry next door. God says, you trample the poor while belting out your praise songs. And you think I'm impressed? Every prophet hammered this home in their own way. God's saying, you want to worship me? Then do justice. Make things right. You want to fast? Then share your bread with the hungry. Take the weight off the guy whose back is breaking. Welcome in the stranger. Cover the naked. What he's really saying is, don't hide behind religion while the people around you are still bleeding and crying for help. Don't mistake singing about mercy for actually living mercy. This has always been God's heart. This is not new. He wants his people to see what's broken and to move toward it, to lift burdens, to make things right, to walk humbly with him while doing good for others. The prophets weren't introducing something new. They were reminding God's people what had already been forgotten. And here's where we still get this wrong. We love the idea of helping the poor, as long as it doesn't cost us any time or comfort or require me to be very close to them. We like what I call drive-by charity. Someone's hurting. Instead of entering into the hurt, instead of entering into their story, we toss them something and just keep driving, right? Once they get really upset, that's when we dig in and we give them some go-away money. Just go away. Just keep moving. You got money for me? I got to go. Just leave me alone. We whip out the go-away money, don't we? We slip somebody a 20, not because we love them, but because we want the guilt to stop knocking at my window. But that's not how Boaz loved Ruth. He didn't just toss some money at the problem. He didn't just toss some grain at her. He entered into her story. He took on 2 more mouths to feed, only to have more children, which make more mouths to feed. And life was hard for him to begin with. But he was willing to do the hard things. He gave back her dignity, not just dinner. God's kind of help. It doesn't humiliate someone. It restores someone. It says you matter. It says you belong. Let's rebuild what's been broken together. That's the difference between charity that makes us, well, maybe feel better, and compassion that actually makes others whole. Boaz models something deeper to us here. Redemption that restores dignity. He used his resources to pull Ruth close, not to keep her at an arm's length. That's what God's people are called to do, not just to relieve pain, but to rebuild. Not to give handouts, but to extend a hand up. Because the moment we treat people like projects, we've forgotten who we are. We are Ruth. We are the poor ones. We are the outsiders. We're the ones who need to be covered. And when we meet others who are struggling, we're not meeting people beneath us. We're meeting people just like us, people who need what we need, a redeemer. So before we judge, before we run right past them or toss a quick fix out the window, we should slow down and ask, what does love require of me right now? Sometimes it means generosity. Sometimes it means boundaries. But it always means relationships. God is about relationships. He sent his son to reconcile us to the Father. He sent his son to reconcile us to one another. And he is now reconciling all of creation unto himself. God is serious about relationships. That is the kind of mercy that can actually change a life. And it's the kind that God delights in. And it's not just the poor who need this reminder. It's the comfortable too. If you're sitting there thinking, oh, well, I'm doing all right. He's not talking about me. Here I come. Ready? I'll start with me. I'll go first, okay? I want a Jeep Gladiator. I don't need it, but I want it. A Rubicon, purple, would be great. I got the trim level picked out. I know the color. I may have built it online a few times just to see what it looks like. I'll tell you, when I think about that Gladiator, I feel something. Not just, oh, that would be nice. I feel like, well, that's where life will finally click into place. Like, oh, that's the thing that's going to make me feel like, okay, you've made it. I'm not starving. I got a roof over my head. I got a pretty nice refrigerator. I have a great job. But most days, you know what? I still feels like something's missing. And so I start thinking, if I could just get that Gladiator, with no warning lights flashing, no rust spots, just clean and perfect with a nice warranty, oh, then I will finally feel blessed. But here's the truth, friends. I'm looking for God in my driveway, and he isn't there. I'm looking for him in accomplishment, in income, in the next level up. That's exactly where he promised not to be. We think God lives in the comfortable, in the safe, in the shiny, in the brand new, but the Bible shows us the opposite type. Excuse me, I'm getting choked up about the Gladiator thing. The Bible shows us time and time again the opposite. He doesn't show up where everything's nice and tidy and wonderful. God keeps showing up where dependence is all you've got. Elimelech ran from dependence, and it led to his death. Ruth ran towards dependence, and that's where she found redemption. That's the fork in the road for every one of us. For some of us, it's running from need to comfort, chasing the next car, the next house, the next bigger number in my bank account. For others, it's being stuck in need and thinking that God has forgotten you. Both of those are lies. Because God dwells with the poor and the powerless, not the polished and the powerful. That is the truth. And maybe you're sitting there thinking, but what about me? I'm doing okay. I'm working hard. I built something good here. Am I in trouble? Is this preacher getting on me? Listen, God is not against success. He's against pride. God is not against money. He's against loving money, hoarding money. If you find yourself near the top of the food chain, the question isn't, should I feel bad about this? The question is, what should I do with this? The gospel doesn't tell the powerful to feel guilty for being powerful. It tells them to get generous, to go low on purpose, just like Jesus did, to get busy investing in the kingdom with all your time and your talent and your treasure. He gave you more because he wants you to do more for the kingdom, to get your hands dirty, because that's where he is among the humble, the dependent, the ones who know how much they need. And that's where you're going to find him too. You don't need a padded bank account or a perfect criminal record or a flawless family or a sparkling resume in order to be near God. You just need to know you need him. Need. Dependence. That is the doorway to grace. And it's the only doorway we have. Here's what we don't want to admit, though. Every single one of us is relationally poor. Not just the broke ones, not just the broken ones. All of us are relationally poor. We are cut off from God, from each other, and from ourselves. But we experience that poverty in different ways. Some of you know you're poor, and you feel it every day. Others of you have worked your whole life to not be poor, and you're terrified of losing what you've built. Let me speak to both of you because Jesus has something to say to both of those. This is how Jesus got it right. If you're the one who knows you're broke, you're on one of the ruts on this image. See, there's the trail, and you got a rut on one side and a rut on the other side. If you know you're broke, you're in one of those ruts. If you walked in here feeling like you're on the outside looking in, if you're maybe fresh out of incarceration, you're wondering if anybody's going to look at you the same now because of that. If you're working 2 jobs and you just can't seem to get ahead, if you're the single dad nursing that beer alone in the garage on Friday night, you're wondering where everybody went. Listen to me, you are not the problem case that God has to work around. You are exactly who he is looking for. Ruth had nothing. She was broke. She was an immigrant. She was a widow, she was gleaning leftover grain just to survive. She had no safety net, no connections, no claim to anything, no property, and God chose her in that exact condition to carry forward a family line that would lead to Jesus, that would lead to you being here right now, 2,000 years later. He did that not after she got her life together, not after she proved herself worthy of such a wonderful investment of grace. Right there, in her need, in her poverty, in her complete dependence. When you know you are empty-handed, you're not further away from God. You're in a position to receive what Jesus offers you even better. But do you believe that? Because God is the one who finds us, whether we're running toward him in desperation or running away from him in self-righteousness. He's going to seek out and save sinners like you and sinners like me. Some of you might remember the story of the tax collector in the temple. He wouldn't even look up. He was so down, he just beat his chest. God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Jesus said that guy went home justified, made right with God. While the religious guy who had it all together, who was praying out loud for everybody to hear, he went home empty. Your criminal record, not disqualifying. Your empty bank account, not disqualifying. Your addiction, your failure, your broken relationships, none of that disqualifies you from grace. The only thing that disqualifies you from thinking you don't need a redeemer, that you don't need someone to cover you. If you think you don't need someone to cover, if you think you don't need to be redeemed, and you already know you do need to be redeemed, you do, don't you? You're halfway there. But say now you're someone who's made it. You're doing okay? You're doing all right. You're not poor. You got struggles. You got 99 problems, but you're not living in poverty. Okay. You worked hard. You built something great. You did it the right way. Maybe you're retired or you own a business or you check your 401k and you feel pretty good about things. Listen, God is not against you. He's not mad at you because you succeeded. But he's got a warning for you. Because comfort is a trap. Look at Proverbs 30. Look what Proverbs says about this. It says, give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that is needful for me, lest I be full and deny you and say, who is the Lord? Comfort, success, a fat 401k, it is a trap. Not because money is evil, but because when you've got enough of it, you stop feeling your need. You don't feel dependent on him when you feel safe and I got plenty of money in the bank, I'm doing good. It's a trap. Money isn't evil, but you not needing God because you have enough money, that's evil. And when you stop feeling your need, you start thinking you don't have any need. Suddenly your hands are full, not empty. You don't need to depend on him for anything. Jesus told a story about two sons. The younger one blew his inheritance on booze and on women, and he ended up broke and broken and feeding pigs. The older son did everything right. He stayed home. He worked hard. He never embarrassed the family. But when the father threw a party for the screw-up who came crawling back, the older brother just lost his mind. I've been here the whole time. I've done everything right. You never threw a party for me, Dad. Father says, son, everything I have is yours. But your brother was dead and is alive again. He was lost and now he's found. Here's what Jesus is saying. The younger brother knew he needed mercy. The older brother thought he'd earned his place. And that one is dangerous. Not because he worked hard, working hard's great, but because he started thinking his hard work bought him something with God. Okay, I'm preaching to myself here. I'm the guy dreaming about the Jeep Gladiator like it's the missing piece that'll finally make me feel whole. I'm the guy with a chip on my shoulder because I got to fundraise. I've worked hard. I've done things mostly right in the last decade. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I start thinking, I deserve a nice, shiny new Jeep. And that's, my friends, that is when I'm furthest from God. Because the moment I think I've earned it, I've forgotten what the gospel actually is. It's not work hard, God will reward you. It's you can earn it. You cannot earn it. There's no earning involved. There's no earning. That's why Jesus paid it for you on your behalf. All of it. Through a perfect life of obedience, through a sacrificial death on a cross. Everything we inherit from God comes from Jesus' perfect sacrifice. So here's where both those ruts sort of meet. Whether you're the younger brother or whether you're the older brother. Whether you know you're broke or you've worked hard not to be broke, Jesus meets you in the same place. He finds us empty-handed before God, relationally poor, cut off, in need of a redeemer. And the only difference is whether we're ready to admit it yet. Ruth did. Naomi did. He met them there, and he provided rescue, a redeemer, and he wrote them into his family tree. Did you catch the name at the end of that genealogy? David. Ruth's baby, Obed, becomes the grandfather of Israel's great King David. And generations later, another baby will also be born in Bethlehem. Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Ruth, the true Redeemer. And how does he show up? The same way God always does. Not in a palace covered in gold, not in a safe, successful place where we would expect. He shows up in poverty, in obscurity, in vulnerability, born in a stable because there was no room for him in an inn. Raised in a dumpy old Nazareth, the town nobody wanted to claim. And when he started his ministry, what did he do? He spent his time with beggars, with lepers, with widows, with outsiders, with tax collectors, with sinners. And the religious crowd sneered, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. Oh, exactly. And that's the point. Jesus didn't just visit the poor, he became poor. He didn't just comfort the broken, he was broken for them. Though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor so that you, by his poverty, might become rich. Read that again slowly. He was rich, he became poor. He was rich eternally, infinitely, gloriously rich. And he became poor, not just materially, but relationally. He was cut off from the Father. Father, why have you forsaken me? He became an outsider so we could be called children of God. He went all the way down past rejection, past abandonment, into the grave to meet us where we actually are, spiritually dead. Completely needy. That's where he meets us. Not where we pretend to be, but on a cross when he screamed out, Father, why have you forsaken me? He experienced the ultimate relational poverty, cut off from the Father so that you never would be. So did the younger brother, the one who can't seem to stop screwing up, Jesus knows what it's like to be despised, rejected, on the outside. He gets you. He went to the cross to bring you home, to make things right. To you, the older brother, the self-righteous, I got my stuff together. Jesus is everything you try to be. Perfect, perfectly obedient, perfectly faithful. And he took the punishment that you've been secretly afraid you deserve so you could just stop performing and finally find rest. He performed for you. He achieved everything you dream about achieving perfectly. Guys, this is not a nice story about God helping people. This is rescue. This is redemption. That's a redeemer who went to the bottom to pull you all the way up. That's the grand finale, the fireworks. Wow. So remember Ruth? Here she was at Boaz's feet. Remember, she came in the night while he was sleeping. She went to his feet there and said, rescue me. She didn't show up with a resume. She didn't negotiate terms. She didn't offer anything. She just laid there in complete vulnerability and said, spread your covering over me. That is the posture that our God desires. Empty hands, exposed need, zero leverage. So younger brother, you already know you got nothing to offer God. Good. You're in a great place. You're ready. Older brother, you got to let go of what you think you earned. It's not getting you closer to God. It's keeping you at arm's length. Both of you come empty-handed because you can't climb up to him. Every religion in the world says, here's a ladder, start climbing, do this, don't do that, purify yourself, prove yourself, work harder, be better. The gospel says something completely different. You cannot reach him, so he came down to you. And like Ruth, we lay ourselves at the feet of our Redeemer and say, spread your wings over me, cover me. That is the moment redemption begins. Not when you finally get your life together. Not when you've proven that you really deserve it. Not when you've climbed high enough. Right here, in your poverty, in your emptiness, in the awareness that you have that you cannot save yourself. That's when Jesus says, I've got you. It is finished. So stop trying to save yourself. Younger brother, stop running from your need. It's not your enemy. It's actually your doorway to redemption. Older brother, stop trusting your success. It cannot save you. Only Jesus can. He doesn't just secure land. He secures your soul. He doesn't just preserve a family line. He throws open the kingdom of God and he says, come on in. This whole genealogy, every name, every generation, it's all a giant arrow pointing straight to Jesus. And that arrow is shouting, this is where God dwells. This is how God saves, through those who know they are poor, through those who embrace dependence, through a Redeemer who went all the way to the bottom to pull us up. If you know Matthew's gospel, it starts with what? A genealogy. You're like, I'm going to read one of these gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. First one, genealogy. It's true. That genealogy, it doesn't skip over Ruth. It highlights her. Ruth is named in the family line of Jesus. When Matthew's trying to make a case for Jesus being the Savior of the world, he highlights the name Ruth, a foreign widow, an outsider, all folded into God's plan. The Messiah, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, is a descendant of Ruth. It is God's way of shouting, I have not forgotten my promises. My plan is still on track. My promises are still good. And you, broken, empty-handed, desperate, you are part of that plan. Whether you're the younger brother or the older brother, whether you know you're poor or you've been running from feeling poor your entire life, remember, God dwells with the poor and the powerless, not the polished and the powerful. Your emptiness does not disqualify you. It is the doorway, the only doorway there ever was. So what do we do with all this? How do we respond? I say, first, see yourself as Ruth. Spiritually speaking, you bring nothing to the table. You are relationally poor. You are cut off. Every one of us is on the outside trying to find our way home. And yet, by sheer grace, Jesus Christ, the Redeemer, covers you, claims you, and writes you into his story. Faith begins when you lay at his feet empty-handed and just say, spread your wings over me, Redeemer. I need to be rescued. Not saying, hey, I got this. I just need a little bit of help. Just get me over the finish line. No, it says, I have nothing. I need everything. Cover me, Jesus. That is the doorway into his kingdom. Second, stop looking for God in comfort. Wherever your heart drifts, the new truck, the house, the vacation, the next achievement, in my case, that beautiful purple Gladiator, that's not where Jesus lives. Jesus said it straight in Matthew 6:21, where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. If your treasure is comfort and success or a Jeep Gladiator, that's where your heart is going to be. But if your treasure is Jesus, your heart will be with him, right where he promises to dwell. There's more room for Jesus in your heart when it's not stuffed full of other garbage. So that means I need to remove the Jeep from my left ventricle to make more room for Jesus. So when those things in there, they get stripped away, that's when we finally see it. Our real poverty isn't about stuff in our garage or what's in our bank account. It's about what's in our souls. Being okay with our spiritual poverty means admitting we don't have it all together. It means embracing the ordinary. It means depending on Jesus daily the way Ruth depended on grain left in the field. So what does that look like in real life? Well, value presence over possessions. Presence, as in being present. When it comes to Christmas time, think about experiences with the grandkids more than stuff. Build relationships instead of chasing recognition. Open your home even when it's not perfect. Give generously even when it feels small. Serve when nobody notices. Third, I say if you want to meet Jesus, you know exactly where to find him. You don't have to wonder. You don't have to manufacture some religious high. Jesus tells us in Matthew 25, listen to this. Then the king will say to those on his right, come you who are blessed by my Father. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, and thirsty and give you a drink? When did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick and in prison and visit you? And the king will answer them, truly I say to you, as you do to one of these, the least of these, my brothers, you did to me. When we stoop low, we're not doing charity. We're meeting Jesus. That's where he promises to be. We celebrate the couple with the college degrees, great earning potential. They leave it all behind and go do mission on the other side of the world. We'll throw them a party. We'll commission them. We support them monthly. Because they're broke. They need a hand. We're excited about it. But back home, we get as far away from relational brokenness as we possibly can. We're moving to the good neighborhoods. We choose schools based on who's not going to be there. We'll send Jesus to the broken on the other side of the world, but we don't want to sit with the broken in our own zip code. If we really want to meet Jesus, you don't need a passport. He's right here with the widow down the street, the family struggling in the housing commission apartments over here, the single mom with 2 jobs, the kid in foster care, the refugee family trying to navigate life in a new country. That's always been the pattern. God always dwells with the poor and the powerless, not the polished and the powerful. And that's where he is, and that's where we need to be. Look at Boaz. He didn't just toss grain. He entered her story. That is the pattern. God's people don't just write checks. They stoop low. They get into the mess of restoring relationships because that's the God we follow. That is precisely what Jesus does. If he was willing to go low, all the way to the grave for us, then we can be sure he's going to meet us when we go low too. So that genealogy of Ruth, it's the grand finale. It's the sky erupting, showing every detail was leading to Jesus, this entire series. All 4 weeks of it was leading to Jesus. So here's my question. Where is your story headed? Maybe it feels like darkness. Maybe you don't see the fireworks. Loss here, death here, dead end there, life's in turmoil. What if God is writing you into something greater right now in the midst of all that? The grand finale of Ruth here shouts it. No matter how small or broken or overlooked you feel, you belong to Jesus Christ. And you belong to him. And you're headed straight for him. Every step, every stumble, it's all a part of his plan. You thought your story was ordinary, forgettable, and done? No, my friends, your Redeemer is here. Would you pray with me? God, thanks for this story. Thank you that your story is not over. Thank you that when the credits start to roll on our plans, when the screen goes dark and the seat starts to empty out, you are still working behind the scenes. You are a God who has a bunch of post-credit scenes. Grace, you are the one, God, who writes redemption where we only see regret. We confess, God, we have looked for you in the wrong places, in the comfort we chase, in the approval we crave, in the success we thought would finally make us feel whole. God, forgive us for mistaking comfort for blessing, mistaking independence for strength. Today we come like Ruth with empty hands, with nothing to offer but need. Spread your covering over us, Redeemer. Fold the poor and the proud alike under your wings. Teach us to trust you in famine and in feast, to see you not just here in the fireworks, but in the quiet fields where faith grows. And when the story feels finished, God, when all we see is loss or loneliness, remind us you are still writing your story. You dwell with the poor and the powerless. And that means you dwell with us, every one of us in this room. So Jesus, write your name across our stories. Turn our bitterness into blessing, just like Ruth and Naomi. Turn our emptiness into joy. Turn our dead ends into doorways of grace. We believe you are not done. You never were. The best scene is still to come. In the name of our Redeemer, Jesus Christ, amen.